another edition of Back Porch Sports. He's Ronnie Sanders. I'm Scott Hamilton. And for the next hour, we're going to take a lap around the Southeastern Conference. And this isn't just any day. This isn't just any month. First of all, we're celebrating 250 years of America. Just give a big thumbs up for that. But it's also July. And with July, that means two things, Ronnie. New fiscal calendars and new sports calendars. July is a big month in college athletics. People don't really realize how many important things happen in July, even though no games are being played.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of as we're going to talk about, a lot of uniform announcements this year, or the apparel announcements this month. SEC Media Days is coming up this month, and some schools are going to start practice at the end of the month. So it's a big month.
Yeah, it is a big month. New sports calendar, new fiscal year, new conferences. The new Pac-12 is launching today. And here we go, Ronnie. And it's a far cry from what was at one point the Pac-16. Oregon State and Washington State, the holdovers from the previous Pac-12, to Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, Gonzaga, basketball only, San Diego State, Texas State, Utah State. They should just call it the Pac States or something to that effect, or the state conference. They're all a state school except for Gonzaga, which has only 1 foot in, that being basketball.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than USC and Oregon and UCLA and those kind of places. Huh?
Yeah, that's I look at that. It's a group of 6. We know it is. They've lost their power conference status. They're lucky to have anything. Good on Oregon State and Washington State for surviving it. Yeah. People don't realize that, I think, or a lot of people, the average fan, we'll frame it like that. The average fan probably doesn't realize the difference in how those schools have had to pivot just to run their athletic departments, because you go from making power conference money to now making group of 6, well, I guess group of 7 money now. Huge difference. And with that comes coaching salaries. You're going to get a different type of coach, or a coach at a different point in his career than you would have when they were in a power conference. But they're still up and running. I bless their hearts, man. God bless them. Yeah,
I mean, look, give them credit. And they stuck together and pulled the Pac-12 back together, or Pac-16 back together at some point. So yeah, give them credit. I mean, they had to pull it up by the bootstraps, and they've done that.
It's also the 5th anniversary of NIL becoming a thing, where everybody knows what name, image, likeness. I never used that phrase in my entire life, name, image, likeness, up until 5 years ago. Now it's part of our everyday vernacular. How different things are now since NIL became a thing.
Yeah, used to you got in trouble for paying players, and now everybody pays players. And that's
sure, you got a few stories.
Well, yeah, I won't tell them on the air though.
Yeah, we'll save those for off the air, or for the after dark version of Back Porch Sports. How about that? It flipped everything on its head, without a doubt. It'll never be the same. My issue is things would be better now if the NCAA, which, remember, the NCAA is comprised of over 1,100 member institutions. The schools are the NCAA, but we'll use the NCAA to reference the blanket of it all. If they had come to the realization decades ago that they couldn't keep all the money, if they hadn't been, they, again, being the 1,100 and so member institutions of the NCAA, hadn't been so greedy and unself-aware, if they had just figured out a nominal amount to pay players decades ago, things would be so much different now. But what ended up happening is, went to court, Ed O'Bannon started it 2013, 2014, thereabouts. And the dollars now are absolutely ridiculous when they could have been reeled in decades ago had they offered them anything.
There's no doubt. And now it's going to take congressional intervention, and we'll see if that happens. I'm not holding my breath. I think this bill has a better chance to pass than some of the others, but I'm not holding my, like I say, I'm not holding my breath on it.
Well, that speaks volumes, the fact that we need federal intervention just to make this thing be better. I don't know. There's some things going on. The 5 for 5 got passed, basically, and the nuts and bolts of that is a player's eligibility clock starts when he or she enrolls in college or they turn 19, whichever comes first. Then they have 5 years to play 5. They got that done. They got that done pretty quickly too. They got that done pretty quickly. A long time ago. Yeah, oh, absolutely. But the Charles Bediako case at Alabama kind of helped expedite that. So I'm hopeful that they can get some things done sooner rather than later. But the NCAA's modus operandi, basically since it was born, was to drag its feet. We'll litigate that another day. Here's what I want to discuss right now. And I'm excited for this. I'm not a sneakerhead. I own one pair of tennis shoes, and they're workout shoes. Okay, that's all. I wear slides everywhere, dude. July 1st, the day when schools typically flip apparel brands, if they're changing. And this year we had 5 schools do it. 4 did it immediately. One's doing it for next year. That includes 2 in the Southeastern Conference. South Carolina going from Under Armour to Nike after 19 years. Tennessee to Adidas after 11 years. What are your first impressions? I tell you that.
Adidas has some interesting uniforms. I mean, look, we talked about this before we got on the air. I mean, there are a lot of schools that, well, most every school now does alternate uniforms. There are about 5 maybe that don't. Penn State's one of those. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out. I know that Under Armour tried for years to get Auburn to do an alternate jersey, and they just straight up refused. So it'll be interesting to see if Penn State does the same thing.
Yeah, I think about Coach Saban's statement that we wear red at home and white on the road.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, but that's not the case. He could do that because he had all those championship rings, and had that Alabama brand and that reputation of excellence. But a lot of places can't do it. In order to go get the recruits, you've got to have the gear. You've got to have the chrome helmets. You got to have 10 different uniform combinations or 1,100 different combinations or whatever ridiculous number they have at Oregon. But that's almost required as much as a football field these days for any program. And that's a big reason, Ronnie, that these deals aren't straight cash. A significant portion of it includes obviously merchandise and then having creative collaborations together in order to create new diverse products and things that excites the fan base. And it's also, look, when you have 10 different jerseys, that's 10 different jerseys that you can sell. That's 10 different points of revenue that you're going to get. So it's smart for these universities to explore those kinds of arrangements. That's what South Carolina did. South Carolina, 10-year deal with Nike, $70 million in product, $5 million in cash, $2.5 million in supplemental products. And that's what I mentioned, the creativity. And 15% of net sales on all co-branded South Carolina, Nike gear. The only drawback that I could see from that deal would be the amount of upfront cash was significantly less. It's $5 million as opposed to $26.5 million. That's what they got from Under Armour back in 2016. But Pat Benson, I spoke with him. He covers apparel for Sports Illustrated. I was able to chat with him for a few minutes. He thought it was a pretty good deal. Here's what he said.
Yeah, I think that's a good market rate right now. I think especially when you see right now it's a little bit of musical chairs again because so many programs are moving around, and I feel like right now we just saw Utah. They're switching from Under Armour to Adidas. I feel like they may have lost that game of musical chairs, judging by their early numbers. But yeah, I think South Carolina did very well for themselves. And also I think it's going to pay off even better with recruits. Recruits want to wear Nike, not Under Armour. And that goes across basically every sport.
What's your takeaway?
Well, I'm not sure that. I mean, he's the expert on uniforms. I'm not, but I think he's right in that recruits want to wear Nike instead of Under Armour. At one point maybe Under Armour was cool, but now it's not. And Nike's always been cool. So, maybe I disagree with you a little bit on the uniforms. See, I think that at this point in time, you've got about 5 or 6 schools that are considered traditional schools. They basically refuse to do alternates. I think that's kind of cool now because everybody does an alternate. Auburn's alternate is wearing a white face mask.
but you have to think though, those schools are traditional football powers. And we're in a new landscape where other universities are trying to separate themselves from the pack. So you see Indiana, great example, the current national champion, they have a bunch of different uniforms. and they're not a traditional football power. Wake Forest has some of the coolest football uniforms I've ever seen. But you're right. Alabama doesn't need to go do that.
Well,
Tennessee has alternate.
Tennessee has alternates. Ohio State has alternates. Michigan has alternates. They don't need to do it, and they do.
They do.
They do.
So you're saying it's cool to not be one of the crowd, to be, well, everybody's doing it, so I'm not going to. You're that guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got what, Texas, Auburn, Alabama, USC, Penn State. That's basically it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else does alternate jerseys.
Yeah, Penn State's. Don't get me started on Penn State's uniforms. Why? I mean, they are the most. If any school needed a makeover, Penn State would be the first on my list. I mean, put something on there. Don't get me started. I have a real issue with it. By the way, Penn State going from Nike to Adidas after 33 years, 33-year relationship with Nike. Now they're going to be the face of Adidas when it comes to colleges. $300 million deal. $300 million deal. That is massive. That is a massive deal. Under Armour, as you mentioned, not as cool anymore, making a conscious effort to scale back its presence in colleges. Still has about 90 Division I universities, but only 6 at the Power 4 level. And that includes Georgia Tech, which just went to Under Armour from Adidas. I haven't seen the particulars of that deal. I think that's got to be pretty Georgia Tech friendly, I think, to leave Adidas. They do have Notre Dame.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cachet with that. But other than that, it's Cal, Maryland, Northwestern. That doesn't really turn me on, does it you?
No, I'm not sure, losing Auburn in the same year and then turning around and going to Georgia Tech. I'm not sure that's what you're going for either. But
yeah,
it's a tough situation for Under Armour. They've really fallen off the map the last few years. And for a while now, they were making quite a run. I mean, they were signing up all kinds of schools.
Well, yeah, maybe they overextended themselves. I remember when they got into golf, I want to say it was with Lucas Glover. He was one of their first signees, guys they endorsed and sponsored, and they dressed. And it was a giant deal. Under Armour was a giant deal because they were really at the front of the market when it came to performance apparel, that wicked away the sweat and all that. Now it's pretty much common knowledge. I mean, even this shirt I've got on, I would have had to go shop this specially now, but it's like the only golf shirt I can find now. They all wick away the sweat. So Under Armour kind of now not that special. A couple of notes here before we go to the break. Adidas has 110 schools, 13 Power 4s. But here's the one that gets my attention. It's Nike. Nike only 65 schools, which compared to the 110 of Adidas, that seems pretty modest. But 33 of those are Power 4 schools. That includes 11 in the Southeastern Conference, 9 in the Big Ten. Nike's still cool for the cool kids, I guess.
Nike's still cool for the cool kids. And it has been since Michael Jordan, right? And that's not even counting the Jordan brands.
Well, kind of does. I spoke to Pat about that, how that dynamic works. And the Jordan brand is being very judicious about how it gets into football. Of course, North Carolina, a couple of others, Michigan.
Florida.
That relationship is fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating. That Jordan brand is Michigan, right? I'm pretty sure. Think about that. And that's something else because Under Armour doesn't have that Michael Jordan. Under Armour doesn't have Tiger Woods. Mm-hmm. They have some good athletes, but they had Steph Curry, lost him. By the way, and I'm chasing rabbits here. 2 things. 1, I've never owned a pair of Air Jordans. Oh, and 2, well, of course you have. You're that hip guy. Have you ever heard the story about how Steph Curry ended up at Under Armour?
I have not.
He and his team, his agents, handlers, whatever, they go into a meeting with Nike. And Nike's got their presentation and it's all laid out and this and that. They kept mispronouncing his name, Stephen. Mm-hmm. And I want to say the presentation deck, and you're a guy that makes a lot of presentation decks. Your PowerPoint is on point. I want to say they still had Kevin Durant's name.
Oh.
Yeah. And so he's like, screw you guys. I'm going home, man. I'm not dealing with this. So Nike shot itself in the foot with regards to Steph Curry. back to the main topic, though. Teams and fans, they want the new gear. They adjust to the new gear. They move forward. And it's kind of the way we have to adjust to our new rosters in this age of unlimited transfers and players adjusting to being in different environments. We think about Florida State, how that's been up and down, how the portal hasn't worked out at Florida State. Now Mike Norvell's under fire after being, 3 years removed away from an undefeated regular season. Those are tall tasks in this new era. Later in the program, we've got David Cutcliffe, former head coach at Ole Miss, former head coach at Duke, SEC Coach of the Year. He was also a two-time ACC Coach of the Year. He's going to join us. We're going to talk about challenges of a coach building a culture in this pay-for-play era and how you keep a locker room together and cohesive, even though you've got players transferring in from all over the place. David Cutcliffe going to join us later in the show. He's Ronnie Sanders. I'm Scott Hamilton. This is Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon.
Good games, good friends, real stories. That's what Saturdays are all about on the Back Porch. Proudly sponsored by Duck Club Bourbon.
Welcome back. It's Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon. We got David Cutcliffe, former head coach at Ole Miss and at Duke. He's going to join us about 12, 13 minutes. I'm going to get his take on the state of college football in 2026. The quarterback whisperer, David Cutcliffe. Most people forget he was a head coach, Ronnie. Kid you not. A lot of people think of him primarily as the guy who developed Peyton Manning, the guy who developed Eli Manning, who they lean on for advice when they're injured or this, that, and the other. But he was actually a pretty good head coach. He took over some programs that were not in great shape and made them consistent winners. Not championship level, but consistent winners, which, given where he was at, an achievement nonetheless.
Well, Ole Miss, when David Cutcliffe took that job, was not Ole Miss with under Lane Kiffin, and they were not committed. Maybe they were committed to NIL back then, but it was a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, he did an unbelievable job at Ole Miss and at Duke. Won a bunch of games at Duke too.
Yeah, he did. He did an amazing job at Duke. That place, I'm very familiar with that program. I will say this. They do have really good uniforms. I love Duke's uniforms. I love Wallace Wade Stadium, which the Rose Bowl was played there one time during World War II in 1941 season 42. They played the Rose Bowl at Duke because they were afraid the Japanese were going to invade the West Coast. True story. It's awesome. It's like it's a sunken in stadium, kind of like a Roman type amphitheater deal. It's wonderful. Wonderful. If you ever get a chance, go to a game at Wallace Wade Stadium. I'll tell you a place that's turned it around is Texas Tech, and Texas Tech keeps making news. And I know it's not SEC, but it's still got my attention. I can't look away now because they are becoming the black hat of college football. The latest news, we knew about the Brendan Sorsby situation. Brendan Sorsby, the transfer quarterback at Texas Tech, banned from the NCAA from ever playing because he gambled, and he gambled on his own team when he was at Indiana a few years ago. He gets a judge to say no, gets an injunction that he can play, and then it's a whole dust up. Then he decides, no, I'm going to enter the NFL supplemental draft. The NFL says, no, you got too many issues, dude. You can enter the regular draft next year, but we ain't creating a supplemental draft for you. So the assumption is he'll go to Canada. Canada goes, oh, no, thanks. Oh, no. You know how the Canadians talk. Oh, no. He's going to enter the draft. So that's the latest. But here's the news that dropped just a couple of days ago. Paramount Plus is releasing a docuseries on Texas Tech. Apparently, they started filming in January. 4 episodes expected to drop before the season starts. Promises to offer, and I'm using the air quotes here for our listeners, unprecedented access, Ronnie. I don't know how I feel about this. What's your take?
My first thought is that I would have loved to have seen a documentary on Nick Saban at Alabama in the same, inside access, because I can promise you, it would not be the language would not be suitable for television. But I don't know, man. Texas Tech is a mess. And give Joey McGuire credit. He's won a bunch of games and done a great job out there. But my God, and Brandon Sorsby, I mean, what can you say? I mean, if I'm the NFL, I mean, I think he's peeing up a rope, so to speak. I don't see him ever playing in the National Football League.
Okay, I'll give Joey McGuire props for doing what he's supposed to do. He's like a chef who has the best groceries. What do you do when you have the best groceries? You're supposed to make the best meal. You're supposed to win games if you have the best players. They spent a lot of money on that roster, and he's done what he's supposed to do. He's gotten out of his own way. Maybe that's the best way to frame it. But here are my questions. Who has editorial control over this? Is this going to be basically an infomercial, a recruiting tool for Texas Tech? The guy who's directing it is Micah Brown. He's the one who did the Connor Stallions documentary for Netflix. I don't know if you saw that. Wasn't bad. It was pretty balanced, I thought. But who has editorial control over this? How much of it is going to be about the Brendan Sorsby saga? How much of it's going to center around the whole deal when Sark was calling them out and they were trying to make the push to buy a game to play Texas to start the season? I'm just wondering, and ask yourself this, Ronnie, and you've been on a lot of coaching staffs. What kind of coach allows this kind of access? Nick Saban would never have allowed it because he wouldn't want anybody to know how he was operating. And for Joey McGuire to do this, I don't know what it says.
Well, Texas Tech maybe is a little bit different, like we were talking about a little bit before. Maybe, it gives them a little bit of publicity that nobody else is getting. But I'm like you. I've never been on a staff. I mean, I can't imagine Nick Saban or Ron Zook or Larry Fedor or any of these other guys that I work with imagine letting cameras in. And I don't know what kind of access they had, but I cannot imagine cameras being in the huddle, cameras being in the staff room, cameras being in the training room. There's a lot of things that get said on a coaching staff and a lot of things that get said in those areas that probably shouldn't be said in public. But again, we're in a different age. Look at the president and what he says every day. So we're in a different world.
Well, this is different. This is obviously something that Texas Tech wanted to do. It had of its own volition. It wasn't like the Hard Knocks series that the NFL oversees each year and has a different team going through training camp. This is a different animal. It's kind of comparable to what the SEC network did last year with South Carolina. They had the Welcome Home South Carolina football series. It was 5 parts. Pretty good. The biggest takeaway of it, though, was the Shane Beamer's wife's cookies. How everybody loved the cookies she was baking for everybody. Other than that, it wasn't anything that inflammatory, but there wasn't anything as inflammatory as what we've seen around Texas Tech happening around South Carolina or really any other university, I guess, until Sharon Moore flamed out at Michigan. We'll go over that another time. Here's the bigger question, though. Let's ask ourselves this. Who else would you want to see have this? I'm going to throw these two out there. I'm thinking LSU at Lane Kiffin.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that would be fantastic theater. Here's one that I think people might be sleeping on, though, and he's a friend of the program, John Sumrall at Florida, because that dude is high energy and there's no telling what he says.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It would be, look, a lot of these places around the country would be fun to watch. I think it'd be fun to watch Lincoln Riley. Dabo Sweeney. I think there'd be a lot of places that'd be really, really interesting to watch. Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. I mean, I think they're, Kirby Smart. I mean, there are a ton of places that I'd like to get an inside look at. Some of them I've got an inside look at, and it would not look. It would look a lot different than what people would expect.
I don't know about the Dabo one. He's so performative. He is so performative. My deal with Dabo, and I think Dabo's a good dude. I think he's a good dude, but I think he likes to put on a show, and this is his post-game routine, and this is me going to be an entitled, bitchy journalist. You're looking at an hour and a half after the buzzer goes off before he handles his media obligations. Shower, change, check some email, jack around, make some phone calls. Then he comes in, does a 10-minute monologue where he just talks stream of consciousness for 10 minutes, then takes his questions. And he's fine during that environment, but to wait an hour and a half, and when you've got a night game,
yeah.
And he loves running down that hill. Boy, he loves running down that hill, leading the pack. I don't like that. I don't think he should run down the hill personally. I think he should be down there waiting on his team to run down the hill.
I would be afraid I'd fall down the hill.
It's steep. I ran down it once.
I did too.
Not during a game. Yeah, I didn't do it during a game or anything, but it was pretty.
It's steep.
But it is cool. Did you see where Morgan Wallen, was it Morgan Wallen? I think he performed at Death Valley about a week or so ago. He actually did the deal where he rode the bus and came around and went down the hill, and that was pretty boss. I will say that.
I believe it was walking out at Florida. There was some saying, maybe it was Morgan Wallen. It was Spurrier came out with him one night and Tebow came out with him the other night.
I was at a U2 concert once and Paul Simon came out. It was at Madison Square Garden.
There you go.
Hey, we've got David Cutcliffe on the other side, but first I want to remind you, if you are interested in the prediction markets and you want to see how you can do, well, guess what? Kalshi is going to give you a head start. Visit Kalshi.com/blitz, and you'll get $20 to begin your journey in the prediction markets. That's Kalshi.com/blitz. David Cutcliffe, former head coach at Ole Miss, going to join us on the other side, going to get his take on college football in 2026 and the challenges that coaches must endure in order to not only build a roster, but to maintain it. David Cutcliffe joining us in just a few minutes. He's Ronnie Sanders. I'm Scott Hamilton. It's Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon.
From the blind to the back porch, some traditions are built to be shared. Duck Club Bourbon, real heritage, no gimmicks. Proud sponsor of Back Porch Sports.
So he was the Broyles Award winner as the top assistant coach in America. He was an SEC Coach of the Year. He was a two-time ACC Coach of the Year, won a bunch of national coaching awards. He won conference titles. And then he moved on to be special assistant to the commissioner of the SEC. Now, allegedly, he is really retired now, but I don't quite believe it. I'm going to ask the man himself. It's the great David Cutcliffe. Coach, are you officially retired, or is it temporary retired?
Oh, no, I'm retired. But I learned a long time ago, don't ever say never, right? I never worked a day in my life, and that's true when I'm being around football players, other coaches. I can't say that I don't miss the relationships badly. But Karen and I are getting time together that's just so awesome. So to say that I will work again, I wouldn't say that either.
Is there a situation that you could see yourself doing right now if you were to come out of retirement? I mean, what would the ideal scenario look like for David Cutcliffe to get him off the couch and out of the house?
Well, it would be to be somewhere where I could help coaches and help players, and not trying to run the show. I'm 71 now. I'm healthy. I'm got a lot of energy. I miss trying to make a difference with young people in their lives. I still get to work with some of my former guys. I get, Daniel Jones and Riley Leonard, oddly enough, are both Colts. And so I spend time with them in the off season and a few other quarterbacks, but I don't really want that quarterback business. There's a lot of people trying to talk me into that route, but I enjoy coaching.
Coach, I tell people all the time that it's hard to step away from the game, not necessarily because of the actual sport, but because of the relationships. And look, in my mind, and I'm sure you're going to agree 100%, there is no more inclusive and welcoming place on this planet than a locker room. And when you don't have a locker room, you feel kind of like you're homeless. That's how I feel.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's absolutely the feeling. I realized when I stopped this thing, pretty abruptly at the SEC, that I'd always been a part of a team my entire life. I mean, I don't even know what age I played. Baseball maybe was the first thing, or basketball, and then my mother finally let me play football at about 10. But I've always been a part of a team, and I really like that. And as a coach, that's all you are, is just a teammate wearing a different hat.
I agree. And the coach was always, we all had dads, and some guys had dads who were more involved, or some guys who had dads who weren't even still with us, bless their hearts. But the coach was always that authority figure that we needed. Even when we got into our 20s, you want that person who's going to guide you and lead you, and you can go to if you got problems. And when you don't have that coach relationship anymore, I still find myself wandering a little bit. I'll say that.
I can understand that completely, and I was fortunate to coach young men that in due time ended up coaching their sons. Now you want to talk about something cool, and that's totally different types of relationships. But wow, it's just kind of spectacular to live generationally like that. And I still have guys call me. I have text regularly, Coach, what do you think about this? And sometimes it's from 40 and 50-year-olds. It's an interesting circumstance that relationship, when it's right, you understand it. I'm loving hearing that, but a lot of people listening to us really wouldn't understand how tight that relationship is. It truly is family.
I'm in the media now and I have been for several years, but I still have a tendency, like I'll send things to even my high school coach from back in the
Sure.
day, hey, I'm going to be on the Paul Feinbaum show. You might want to check it out. And I'm 50 years old now, Coach, and I sent him that. My college coach is no longer with us, but I'd probably send it to him too.
Well, I mean, and that's the way it is. That's my concern right now. When we don't invest in relationships, we're investing in the almighty dollar. And that is not what is the greatest opportunity to gain something out of sports. And I know people say, well, you made money. I made money. I didn't make the kind of crazy money it gets to now. But, no, that wasn't what it was about. And that relationship you're describing is much more valuable to you than money you would have received between 18 and 22 years old. And there, I don't want to get into all of it, but when you start getting into agents, you get into family members, they're pulling on 18 to 22 years olds, and it's not very, very pretty. I spent 4 years traveling, going to campuses in the SEC. So I had conversations with young people, and I saw firsthand a lot of what is wrong with it.
Joined by the great David Cutcliffe. Coach, you did spend time in that special assistant role. And I was going to ask you about that, what that involved. And obviously you did go and see the inner workings of every program in the conference. But a lot has developed since you took that job, and a lot has developed even since you stepped away a few months ago. You say to college football right now, college athletics in general, how far away is it exactly, would you say, from the relationship building phases that we both experienced? And can it be corrected, rolled back, I guess, to go back to what it should be about, educating young men, preparing them for life going forward?
That's a great statement, the way you put the question. There's multiple parts that you have to look at. And it's an interesting thing. I mentioned to some of the people at the higher levels, I made trips to Indianapolis in that role. I sat with ADs, presidents, certainly the commissioner, who is just terrific and brilliant. But what I could do, and he called me about that role because he knew I had stopped coaching, and he said, we need a coach on the inside, of this conference office. And so I flew to Birmingham, and that's how it all started. You asked what my job was. It was just football. I was there to listen to, again, presidents, ADs, coaches, the commissioner, learn the problems, talk to a few lawyers. I would go to campuses, all 16 campuses. The first, and you'll understand this, maybe listeners won't. First place I'd go would be to the equipment room.
Mm-hmm.
People say, well, why'd you go to the equipment room? Well, that's the closest group to a locker room in any football facility. They have a finger on the pulse. Tell me what you think about the locker room. You've already mentioned a lot. Tell me what these players, and those guys, they're certainly not doing their jobs for money. You know that. And I just tried to listen, to develop, hopefully there would be some paths to try to make some things better. I think we were able to do that, but ultimately it came down to not even really just legal. It became too fiscal for me. So you ask how long or can this, or unless there is some drastic change, and there will be drastic change. It's going to blow up. Hopefully it doesn't blow up in the wrong direction. But I think you need public opinion, and it's worthy of a fight. And if I don't work there anymore, and they don't want to hear from me. But if I had one thing to choose, I would pick one fight. Don't be they battle 100 things. One fight. And if I had to pick the one fight, I would pick the transfer portal. When that opens up, you're teaching, you're devaluing education, and you're teaching everything that you shouldn't teach about commitment. You're teaching everything you shouldn't teach about being a teammate, which is the best thing that anybody can ever say to any of us that played the game, is when somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, man, you were the best teammate I ever had." How powerful is that? And, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't even want to know. But I had too many lawyers from all over the country. "Well, we can't win that court." And I said, "Really? When did y'all go?" "Well, we hadn't. We just can't win it." I said, "Oh." So all those years I stood at midfield and saw that we didn't look anything like that team would get ready to play. And I went ahead and played it anyway. I shouldn't have played. They just look at me funny. I said, "Man, put your gloves on and go fight." And that's where David Cutcliffe is. But that's all right. You're hearing some of my frustration, but that honest to goodness is what it's going to take. And where, that goes, they've gone to Washington, D.C. to find it. I don't know if that's the answer. They struggle doing their own thing. So when you get right down to it, I think you have to look at the presidents of the institutions getting together and saying, "This is what we're going to do. Sue us if you want to." Every time you turn around, agents, lawyers, everybody's suing. Why are they suing? If you'll look at the suit, what's addressed to it? Money. There's nobody been abused, and money has been abundant now for a while, but nobody's been abused in my time from a standpoint of being, hurt financially. Free educations and care and development and, all of it. So I think you can win public opinion. And as old Abraham Lincoln said, public opinion, you can get anything done.
You two things on what you just said. One, you reminded me of my dad saying, "Can't never could till he tried." So
that's right.
You don't know till you try. Coach, I can handle failure. I just can't handle not putting forth effort. You're the same way. I know you got to be.
Yeah.
Here's my last question for you though, and I think Commissioner Sankey was brilliant by wanting the coach to be his boots on the ground, his eyes and his ears at the 16 member institutions of the SEC. But I don't think there's enough student athlete involvement. And I was pleased to see there was a student athlete or two for the testimony on Capitol Hill for the Protect College Sports Act. But I don't think these high level discussions elsewhere have student athlete opinion, don't have student athlete input. How important is that in your mind to figure out a way to rectify that? And in what regard or how do you integrate it? How do you bring student athletes in on these decisions?
Well, they're there. They get it's not publicized, but it's an interesting thing. There are a lot of student athlete committees. They're heard, they're brought up often, and I've sat in meetings with them. So I'm not being ugly, but they're not really representative of what are the mainstream student athlete. Those guys don't join into that stuff. You understand what I'm saying? The first teamers, the All-Americans, the all-conference players won't do it. And so, I just, it's not effective the way it is. And again, they need to be counseled by someone they trust and explained to, because, well, they can jump on, well, we need this, or we need, and they're not really knowing what they, it's supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be easy. This should be hard work. And not many people, 18, 19, 20 years old, embrace hard work as well as they should. You have to learn it. So I agree that there needs to be input, but when you can get online and go to the NCAA and look at the football student athlete advisory committees and look at some of the schools they're from. It doesn't interplay, and I'm not criticizing them. It's just not as effective as it could be. And I'm not sure we always know at 18 to 20 years old what's best for us. I do believe we need a commissioner, Roger Goodell. I like him. He and I get along well. He gets booed every time he walks on stage at the draft. But guess what? It's been very effective, and somebody's got to be willing to say, okay, here's what we're doing. I wish we had a commissioner's role. And then you'd have a chance to, okay, you can fire him, run him off. But you make tough decisions. You know what George Patton said. And I've read a lot about him, and that's one of the things all our quarterbacks learned from me was the Patton principle. And what that is he admitted to making a lot of decisions that were mistakes in Europe. But he said the magic is once you make that decision, you go like hell and make sure that it ends up being the right one. Well, that's quarterback play. No namby-pamby, make the decision, get the ball out of your hand, but make sure you make it the right decision. That's what, in my opinion, we need right now, to grab the bull by the horn and say, here we go. And get sued,
Well, my last question for you, Coach. Would David Cutcliffe be the commissioner of college football if he were offered the job?
I would have a hard time turning that one down, but I don't see that happening. So I'm passionate about it. Somebody asked me the other day, I'm back living in Alabama, said, what would Coach Bryant do if he came back to life? I said, well, if he walked out of the grave, I don't know how many steps it would take for him to see what's going on. He'd turn around and go back to the grave. He'd just say, to hell with this. And that's a fact. But I'm not losing hope. Let's keep our hope alive, right?
He's the great David Cutcliffe. Coach, my last question, what are you going to do for the rest of the summer?
Well, grandkids. I've got 10 of them. How great is that? And we're going to go down to Florida. We do it. We've got an annual trip that we take with my wife's mother, who's now 94, and all of our children, grandchildren, some of her family. We'll have 33 people down there. And what I will do after that is recover for about a month.
Coach David Cutcliffe, two-time ACC Coach of the Year, SEC Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, you've done it all. I appreciate you joining us. Promise me we can get you back on down the road and we can actually get into some football topics.
Absolutely. That'd be great, Scott.
All right.
Take care.
All righty.
Stick around. We'll be right.
We believe Saturdays are built on family, tradition, and the stories that stick with you. Duncan Williams helps protect the legacy behind it all, today, tomorrow, and for what comes next.
Making a final lap this edition of Back Porch Sports presented by Duck Club Bourbon. I want to thank David Cutcliffe for joining us on the Duncan Williams Asset Management Hotline. Coach Cut. What I like about Coach Cut is, he knows ball. He knows football. I mean, the work he's done as a head coach and also as an assistant coach, Broyles Award winner, in the development of the Mannings, which, again, that's kind of like being a chef and getting the best groceries. When you get a couple of Mannings, your job is to make them even better. That's pretty good. But he's so thoughtful about other things. And I really enjoyed our talk about the culture of the locker room and the environment of the locker room. That was my biggest takeaway from all that, just how thoughtful he was and how he realized the importance and specialness, if that's a word, of team and being on a team and having a team. I miss a team, man. I'd give anything to be on a team. I don't care if it's a bowling team, softball team, debate team. I miss being on a team.
First of all, great interview. I thought it was phenomenal. And, I agree with you. I miss being on a team too. That's one thing I miss about being in football is I miss, and not just the players. I miss the players. I miss the coaching staff. You miss the people that you go in and see every day. I mean, look, Ron Zook used to lock me out of the staff meeting because I'd be late. And so he'd tell me, if you can't get here, one morning he locks me out. He says, if you can't get here on time, just get here when you can. But you enjoyed being around those people. You enjoyed being around the head coaches. And, Nick Saban, you see him in the morning and he might be in a grouchy mood. One morning I asked him to just pick it off. So, but, it's fun being around those guys. It's fun being around the players, and it's fun influencing the players, and doing what you can do to influence their lives.
I always liked it when I got to meet the parents of my teammates who were, you got guys, some guys are like you. They're from the same area. They speak like you. They dress like you. They talk like, all that. But then you have some people from all over, way different cultures. Like I've had teammates from South Florida. I grew up in Appalachia. I have teammates from South Florida. I had teammates from New York, Long Island, which was a whole different animal, believe me. But you come together as a team, and eventually you stop noticing those differences. And then when you meet their family, and they're exposed to that constantly. Your teammate is with you. You're sequestered in the locker room, so things start become its own dynamic. But then you meet those people, and you're like, wow, that's cool. And they think you're like a zoo animal. They can't understand us. But they were so kind, and I really miss that. So we'll put a pin in that. That interview might be worth replaying at another time. We're definitely getting him back on come the season. Big heads up. SEC Media Days, you mentioned it at the opening of the show. July 20th through 23rd in Tampa, Florida. 4-day affair. It's an extravaganza like any other. Day 1, Kentucky, Mizzou, Oklahoma, Tennessee. Day 2, Auburn, Georgia, South Carolina, Vandy. Day 3, Alabama, Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. And then on the final day, Arkansas, LSU, Mississippi State, Texas. My biggest takeaway from how that is all allocated, they sprinkled out the new head coaches so you have one each day, because those are going to be points of emphasis for the media that's going to be down there.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And look, last year I don't think you had any new coaches. This year you've got 4, 5, whatever it is. I mean, it's a robust group this year, so it'll be interesting to see how long they last.
Yeah, and they do have Kiffin and Sark on the same day, on day 4, so that's going to be a hot ticket. That one's interesting. That one, okay, but it's Arkansas and Mississippi State. Okay, so you got Ryan Silverfield going from Memphis to Arkansas. He'll get some attention. Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State, he's going to get attention because he's more than likely going to be coaching his last season as the head coach of the Bulldogs. So I have to think that the media going to be wearing out LSU and Texas's tables on that day. I'm curious to hear how, and we've had Will Stein on the program. We had John Summerall on the program. These new head coaches are all very polished. You've dealt with Alex Golesh. It's a big step to not only go from the group of 6 to the Power 4, but to go to the SEC, and to go to the SEC as it's beginning a 9-game conference schedule. I want to see how these guys handle it year one. I'm sorry to say that I think at least one of these new coaches, Ryan Silverfield included, one of these new coaches is going to fall flat on his face. And I'm not automatically going to say it's going to be Arkansas. I'm not. Arkansas is in a bad spot. They're still rebuilding this, that. But I think we're going to see something happen that we're going to go, wow, we expected them to do better. But on the flip side, I also think we're going to see a coach have success that we didn't expect. Mm-hmm. And I think it might actually be Will Stein at Kentucky.
He was impressive in the interview that we did with him. I really liked him a lot. Think he's a perfect fit for there. He played at Louisville, believe it or not. But he grew up a Kentucky fan, and he's a great fit. John Summerall is a great fit at Florida. It's going to be it should be a fun year.
Well, the wild card at Kentucky is going to be the quarterback play. Kenny Minchie was, I think, second or third string at Notre Dame. He's now the quarterback at UK. How will he do in that offense with the Will Stein offense. Will Stein coming from Oregon, where he was the offensive coordinator. How will that align? Going to be very different from when Mark Stoops was the head coach, to say the least. I remember, Ronnie, and this is funny, and I might have mentioned this before. I think it was 2019, and Kentucky went through all of its quarterbacks. They were all hurt. It was awful. They put Lynn Bowden in at quarterback, and he was a receiver, running back. Quarterback was like the last thing on his resume. Mm-hmm. And basically, he willed them to, I want to say 7 wins, maybe 8. They had a pretty solid season, but it was Lynn Bowden left, Lynn Bowden right. Lynn Bowden left, Lynn Bowden right. And then he'd throw like a 10-yard out or something. That would be going deep. I actually had him 3rd on my Heisman list that year. Put him on my ballot.
Well, he probably deserved it. I mean, look at the year he had.
Well, he carried that team, and I haven't seen many other players do that. That's it for this edition of Back Porch Sports. I want to give you one more reminder that if you want to explore the prediction markets, Kalshi is going to give you a head start. Visit Kalshi.com/blitz. You'll get $20 to begin your journey. That's Kalshi.com/blitz. Again, we want to thank David Cutcliffe for joining us on the Duncan Williams Asset Management Hotline. Don't forget to check out our podcast on YouTube, Back Porch Sports. Give us a like, follow, whatever you do for podcasts. Do it for this one. Comment. Leave a comment. Questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, whatever. Hit us up. If there's a topic you would like us to discuss, we'll do it. If there's a guest you would like us to bring on, we'll do our darndest to facilitate it. Otherwise, he's Ronnie Sanders. I'm Scott Hamilton. This has been Back Porch Sports, presented by Duck Club Bourbon.